Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, this is like a collaboration with DB. There's a Scandinavian travel brand that we have the fortune to work with. An incredible team. Special thanks to people like Marcus and Tech and Dave, but then also from the Burkard team, Jeff, Mike, and yourself. I know that you are very particular with the brands that you want to work for, making sure that it aligns with your mission statement. Can you talk about that first off, and then how you and DB aligned?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first things first, DB's original name was Douchebags, which was an amazing brand name, and then they changed it to something slightly more palatable, which is hilarious. They always get mad when I still call them that, but I'll be honest, like, it was the irreverence of the brand that I liked in the beginning and still now, and that's just how they operate, right? It's funny. It's a bunch of guys and gals from Sweden who just like wanted to make something different and didn't want to compromise on quality, and that's really what it's about. Like, I was enamored by their marketing and the savviness and kind of the obviously the Nordic countries are something that I'm very passionate about. And when you see the branding and the way that they approach things and the simplicity of their design, it leaves something to be desired, when you're kind of in the States and sometimes things feel overcomplicated and clunky. And so their bags and really their travel system was pretty crucial to me in the beginning. So we ended up making a collaboration. I made this 6-piece set that was basically the way that I like to shoot is active, and I like to not have my cameras tucked away deep inside a backpack because, as they say, the best camera is not the one you have with you, it's the one you're willing to pull out. And oftentimes, as you know, you'll be somewhere, it's beautiful, you got a camera way down in your bag or in your car, and your phone's in your pocket, so you use that. So I wanted to make a side piece, like a shoulder bag, which is how I like to shoot. It's a reporter style waist pack where you are on the go and you can fit a camera in there and you can fit your day's supplies, and something happens, you can pull it out and shoot. And basically I just made this kit so that I could store my own personal stuff, my surf stuff, my body surf gear, a wetsuit, a housing, a packable cube, as well as some roller bags. And the cool thing about it is that if you've ever been a one-man show traveling through an international airport with excess baggage, the ability to take a duffel and attach it to a roller bag and have it kind of shuttle itself is ingenious. And that's really what drew me to that brand first and foremost, was their ability to kind of have that with all of their kit, which is awesome. So, yeah.
And we spoke earlier, and you expressed the importance for a product or, specifically a bag, make sure that you're answering a question or you're solving a problem.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty... it's a bummer to bring something to market that doesn't either, again, solve a problem or answer a question. Like, the last thing the world needs is just more stuff. And so for me as a photographer and as a traveler, I'm trying to answer the call or the need that I think solves some of the issues that people like myself experience, where you are, having to bring the equipment for any kind of situation that presents itself. On a lot of jobs, I don't really know if I'm going to be swimming under the ocean, shooting some, surf scenario, or if I'm going to be shooting climbing, or if I'm going to be having to schlep bags to the snow. So I wanted to create materials that could withstand all those and gear that could hold all that stuff. And that's kind of what it was born out of, is like, let's think of all these scenarios. And again, I know that I'm kind of in this 1 percentile where most people maybe don't need all of that, but it's really great to have equipment that could be drug through volcanic sand for 100 miles if you had to, and last. So I think you build it to that standard and then you use it for what your needs are.
Awesome. Yeah. This is a very, very big question.
Oh gosh, great. Jump right in.
What's the significance of the alpaca?
The significance of the alpaca, which one?
There's more?
Well, there was more. We got rid of a few because it was becoming, we were starting to have like a small useless farm at a certain point. And but to be honest, if you live in California, you're very aware that forest fires are a real thing, and fire is a real danger. And so where I live, it's illegal to not clear your land. And so we were like, well, we either hire somebody to go out and mow this thing or whip it down, and that costs a lot of money, or we buy goats or we buy sheep, and those are pain in the ass type of creatures. So we were like, alpacas, they're good to kids, they're nice, they're not jerks, they're really cute, let's get them. And that's why we got alpacas. And then, of course, they evolved into like this kind of pet creature, and just, we fell in love with their mannerisms and everything. And I think in some way, you know, you don't. I just have there's a tendency to like if I bring something into my life, and it's a larger than life personality, I wanna embrace it fully, and so that's kind of where that came from. And oddly enough, the alpaca branding is all over the bags, and I've made logos out of it and this and that. But I mean, I think that it speaks to the fact that like you just can't take life too seriously. Like if there is an animal that you can look at and it will make you smile, that's a gift, like from wherever, right? And I just think that's like a beautiful thing, you know, to remind me to not take life too seriously. You know, it's not a skull and crossbones on the bags, you know. It's a furry animal with sunglasses. So, I mean, maybe just remind yourself that we're a privileged bunch. We get to travel, we get to experience places like this. Maybe the goal or the idea is to be more like an alpaca and spread joy. Yeah.
Do you have a tattoo of an alpaca?
I don't have a tattoo of an alpaca. Yeah.
With sunglasses. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. You could get one first, I think. You have some space.
I'll find some room.
Yeah. I'll license it to you. No worries. Yeah.
So you're currently just making the full move to Iceland, right? You got the family settling in.
Yeah, it's not a full move at this point. You know, it's more of a wait and see scenario.
Okay.
You know, I think that growing up again in a really small town and environment, I would have given anything when I was a kid to have the ability to go and see a new place and a new experience. Oh, thank you so much.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, a new place and a new experience, and be able to kind of have had that perspective in life, because I didn't grow up with that. You know, traveling gave me that, and I, you know, sat my kids down, you know, like a year ago after having gone there for the length of summer, 3 months, which is the maximum amount of time you're allowed to stay as a non-EU citizen. And I was like, would you guys ever want to go there for a year? Would you ever want to go to school there and just see what it's like? And you know, I think without thinking, they're like, yeah, of course, you know. And then I was like, okay, well, let's think about it. We'll go this summer, and if at the end of summer you want to stay, like, we'll try and figure it out. And that's exactly what we did. We're trying to figure it out. So I've got a work permit, I've got a work visa, and basically a visa from immigration to stay. And so it's a bit of a wait and see. You know, we're definitely not, you know, going to say that California's not home anymore, but I do find a lot of joy in the access to nature. And I do find a lot of joy in the fact that I feel closer to my family being there. And I also feel like, for me, the proximity of going to more unique landscapes and documenting them at a moment's notice is a joy. I find myself at home being so comfortable that, you know, I often have given these talks and TED Talks and written books about the importance and the desire to get outside of your comfort zone. And I feel like I would be doing myself and everybody a disservice if I wasn't actually living that. And so it felt disingenuous to stay in an environment where I wasn't growing myself. And so that's really what that experience is all about. Like, I want to try it. Just want to see what it's like and see where it goes, you know? Yeah,
being comfortable, being uncomfortable, you know?
Absolutely, yeah, it's crucial.
But you were born and raised in the Central Coast, up in SLO, right?
I was born and raised in, Rio Grande, yeah.
Awesome. So you know, you're kind of developing a second home in Iceland. Would you want to explain maybe like the differences, but then also the parallel between California and Iceland?
Yeah, it's about 7,000 miles away. Yep. And the temperature is fairly chilly at times. But in the summer, you can have absolutely incredible days. And the way that I've always put it is like, if you've had one great day in the summer in Iceland, it's like 10 good days in California in the summer. I mean, when it is, you know, 65, 70 degrees all day long and a warm breeze, and you can see 100 miles in the distance, and the sun is setting on the horizon for 7 hours, like, there is nothing better. I mean, I can't articulate it more. And I was kind of like, well, you know, and again, I don't want this talk to be like a crap on California, because I love California. Like, this is my home, my blood is here, my family's here. But it brings me a lot of joy to be in an environment where there is changing seasons, and I get to experience that, and I get to document that. And I think that the draw for me is just how lush and vibrant and alive it is. And I mean, for anybody that's traveled there, anybody that's traveled in general, it's empowering to see places that are different from home. You know, it also makes you appreciate home more. Like, that's an important thing too. Like, I'm appreciating being here right now, appreciating wearing a t-shirt and wearing shorts. I haven't done that in a minute. So I think there are aspects to it that kind of just give you perspective. Perspective is everything, and I think that's what traveling should do. And sometimes that perspective needs to be more than just you know, a landscape or the beauty. It's also like you need to appreciate the environment or the environmental initiatives or the political system or the school system or whatever it is. Those things as a kid are crucial. And like I said, I didn't appreciate that until I was in my mid-20s. I think I would have been a different person had I not traveled. I owe everything to travel, absolutely. And I hope that my kids can learn some of these lessons early on, and not have to go what I went through and learn the hard way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a really strong artist community here in Costa Mesa, from painters to photographers, videographers, you name it. I've had the fortune to work with many like Hunter Gahn and Mike Pham. So there's a really strong presence here in Costa Mesa. Can you explain, is there a bit of an artist community out in Iceland, maybe Benjamin Hardman, all those guys?
Sure, yeah. I mean, per capita, they have the most Emmy award-winning composers and musicians in the world. They have more published authors than any other country in the world. Let's just say that there are more creative people in that environment than anywhere. Also because the population is micro, right? It's the size of a small suburb of LA. So the size and the population size does give them an advantage. But I will say that given the fact that there are these harsh, long seasons, because I was asked this question the other day, like, why is it that there are so many incredible artists coming from a country like that? And I genuinely feel like it's because people have the seasonality where, it is dark for 3-4 months out of the year, and you have this time to work on stuff. A lot of times, these artists are able to go into the studio and produce some of their very best work, and it's all they're focusing on that whole time. You can really hone in on something you like. I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to do during that time of year. I'll probably lose my mind a little bit, but so you have to have something. And I think when you dedicate yourself to something, and you realize that that is a natural process, to kind of flourish in the spring and the summer and the fall, and then have a time where you can reflect and introspect and work on something, I think that's really beautiful. And I would say that, yes, I am truly inspired by the artistic community. I think anybody who's traveled there appreciates that as well. You see it, it's on their buildings. If there's an ugly building, it is going to be covered in beautiful graffiti, or it's going to be covered in street art, or you're going to be out there in the middle of winter and people are going to leave their lights on their house, right, to bring and illuminate these darker, gloomy times of day. And even that feels like artistry. Even that feels like a celebration. And I think that to me, it speaks to this idea of finding joy in kind of these harsher scenarios and harsher moments. They are generally a really happy people, and I aspire to kind of find that happiness myself.
That's awesome. I mean, with Sea People's Market, with myself, I think human connection is huge. I think that
absolutely
and we talked about it earlier, we had some nice barbecue for lunch. Yeah, we're so.
I know, I'm still it's like feeling that barbecue from lunch. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've had brisket, so it was time. It was time to do that. Yeah.
And I mean, I believe that through the act of travel, the art of being spontaneous, and just trusting your gut on things, I believe that it can turn into great stories, and you can meet incredible people along the way.
Absolutely. I'd love to just speak to that. I think that one of the common themes that I see when it comes to just generally the way in which we travel these days, and this isn't related to Iceland, it's just about anywhere, is that we often go to places with this hit list or this tick list of things we need to see, things we need to do, and we fill up our time with so much, with such an agenda, that we leave no room for the unknown, and we leave no room for the mystery that I genuinely feel like traveling can provide. We chatted at length about the importance of traveling solo at times, or leaving room in your schedule for the unexpected. And there was a time when we used to say things like, went down this remote dirt road, not just because it sounded good, because we actually did it, and we found what was there. And I will say that as I get older, and as I've done this more, I try to create more time for those experiences, because the magic that happens in those moments, the stuck somewhere without a place to stay, and all of a sudden somebody takes you in, and it just so happens that person's cousins, uncles, brothers, moms, whatever, is this person who you end up making a film about, or you end up telling a story about. Or for me, you end up being able to visit their home and have this incredible experience and go back every single year. Though that's like the magic, that's like the spice of those experiences. And I think that when you seek that out, it's really incredible what happens when you leave room for it. And I feel genuinely sad for people that go to anywhere with this intent of just kind of doing the big game hunting, right? You got to see all the things and do all the things because you set yourself up for failure in the beginning, right? If you deem your trip unsuccessful because you didn't see this, or you didn't see that, or you didn't go there, it's really challenging. It's really challenging to go there and feel like you can have something that is truly for you, something that is truly new, and something that really creates a sense of vulnerability. Because to me, that is probably the key with traveling with intent and creating amazing experiences.
And through these experiences, can you think of like a notable human that you met during your travels that you can talk about that has made a big impact in your life?
I mean, there are so many people who have, absolutely. I mean, I would say that I feel genuinely like the byproduct of a lot of very helpful local people. In fact, it's interesting because I guarantee there are some people here who have traveled to more countries than I have. I don't even aspire to be somebody who has seen all of the world. In fact, I think it was probably 10 years ago that I really stopped going to new places, or I stopped pursuing them, because traveling somewhere new is much like a drug. It's like a dopamine hit. You get off the plane and the sights and the smells and everything's so overwhelming and you're so excited. And oftentimes you're driving, 60 miles an hour, taking photos out the window, and those photos suck. And it's just what it is. I don't want to go shallow and wide. I want to go deep and immersive. And that's why I started going back to places. I went to, Alaska 9 times, and Norway 7, 8 times, and Iceland 75 times. And I just felt like I wanted to go back because there were people that I cared about. There were people that made the experience special. There were environmental initiatives I wanted to learn about and understand, and I wanted to kind of care for and advocate for. And I think that approach, I don't know, I think it just opens us up to being able to meet more interesting characters and realize how important these communities are in these places. And I would say that, yes, the landscapes are incredible, the hot springs are great, the food is amazing, but it's the people that keep you coming back. And there have been a number of notable people. I would say that this book, At Glacier's End, it's the byproduct of a relationship that I had with a pilot in Iceland. His name was Diego, or Hadi, and it was him flying me around these landscapes, telling me, I was this kid who, I had seen photos of rivers in Iceland, or I'd seen aerial landscapes, and I'm like, take me there. And he's like, okay, that's cool, but let me take you somewhere else. And I remember him flying me over this dam and showing me this river system that was, at risk of being destroyed because of extractive industries. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I had no idea. This is so devastating. And we spent year after year after year, 7 years, flying over these places. Him sharing his country with me understanding and seeing it through a new perspective. And that relationship was what blossomed into this book, into this project. I ended up advocating and speaking on their behalf in front of the Icelandic government at an environmental conference. The hope was to create a national park, and it's still something that is kind of in situ, and it's something that they're still fighting for. Point being is that those relationships are so incredibly special. And it seems like there are endless situations like that, where the time spent there has resulted in something more than just beautiful images, but stories worth sharing, or an experience that has kind of opened you up to something that you didn't know was there before. There's a vulnerability that comes from, I think, seeing a place from fresh eyes. And that's what you hope traveling does for you. I mean, that is literally the process of becoming a better person through traveling. And I'm not saying I'm a better person at all, but I'm saying that's what we aspire to do. But that process usually happens before you leave your front door. Because you can climb Everest an asshole and come down an asshole. So there's nothing at the top. There's nothing at the peak that changes that for you. You have to be changed in the process. And so I truly think that's a part of it, right? It's trying to see it through a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that, like I said, human connection is huge. And I've learned that through meeting amazing people all over the world, but then also experiencing losing close ones in unexpected situations. And so I've learned that Hadi did pass away, and we both have shared the experience of losing a close one. So I just want to hear your thoughts of grieving of Hadi, but then also talking about understanding how to honor someone like him, and for him to be doing exactly what he loves to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I haven't gotten that one in a long time. And there's a voicemail that there was an Instagram voice note that he sent my wife. And he was telling my wife, Bree, he's like, you should just pack the bags and move to Iceland and bring the kids. And he's like, just see what it'll be like. Just one time, just for a couple months, whatever it was. And of course, I think that his message and his goal there was to just inspire us to realize that this was a place that we could make a life. We didn't have to have some excuse for it. We didn't even have to have everything perfect and everything. So, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed to make it happen. And, I feel like in some way I try to carry on that legacy of being a gracious host and being willing to share with people. I feel like I'm constantly reminded of the privilege that traveling brings. I grew up in a single parent home with just my mom, who took care of me for a lot of years. She was 17 when she had me. She never went anywhere, never owned a passport until I took her to Iceland for the first time. And so I feel genuinely like there is something to be said for carrying on that legacy of wanting to share places. Iceland is irrelevant. It's more about sharing the world. That's what I aspire to do through images. That's what I hope to offer people in terms of what I talk about and what I advocate for, is that if you ever want to care about some of these environments, you have to see them. That's a part of it. We can talk till our nose bleed about the importance of glaciers, but until you see one in person, you probably just won't care. It's just how humans operate, And so I feel genuinely like the closer I can bring people to those places, whether through film or video or books, or speaking about it and trying to be vulnerable and opening up myself, the more they could potentially care about it, the more they could potentially vote for it, the more they might want to preserve it for themselves or for their kids. Who knows? I don't know. That's not for me to decide, but I feel like that's kind of how I try to honor that legacy, because I think that's what was shown to me, and that's what was gifted to me from that friendship.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
I lost my best friend, Hennessy, 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I talked to you earlier, I didn't discover a true value that you taught me and many others is being able to live big. We called him Big Hen. He was 6'7", just Goliath, mm-hmm. but gave you the warmest hugs, Mm-hmm. And he taught me the value of living big, to have big dreams, mm-hmm. and to be able to pursue them as soon as you can, mm-hmm. But being a good human along the way, mm-hmm. just being unapologetically yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of us in the audience, we have big dreams, aspirations, passions, but I know for some or many that it's difficult to make that leap, yes. to fully commit for those dreams to come true. It can be scary, intimidating. It might not be financially savvy, So I kind of want to listen a little more about, what your dream was and the moment that you knew to make that leap.
Yeah, great question. I'm not the person to give, financial advice to anybody, because most of the decisions I've made have kind of been like, well, this could lead to financial ruin, but let's just do it anyway, And, I'm running a gallery in one of the most expensive countries in the world, and I decided to move my family there. It's ridiculous. It's a ludicrous situation. But in fact, if there's one thing I've noticed, especially when it comes to career and especially when it comes to making a leap, I know a thing or two about it, because I quit my job at 19 and I quit college, and I told myself I was going to give everything to photography and just see where it took me. And if I was face down in a ditch somewhere in 5 years, so be it. If I was thriving, even better. And luckily, I was thriving, but I moved straight into my truck and lived below poverty level and ate, Mexican food in San Clemente, and just basically was driving up and down the coast, showing up at beaches at sunrise, trying to find whoever would be willing to let me take pictures of them. And I would say that with any decision in my career, and there have been many big ones, it's always been a situation where I'm at the bus station and the bus is leaving and my bags aren't packed and I'm not ready and I've got to go. If I'm going to take that opportunity, it's going to happen with or without me. It's not going to come back around. There's not going to be another stop. I'm not going to catch up to it. I've got to go and I'm not ready. And that's just how it works. Like, opportunities hardly wait for those who have their bags packed, those who are ready. And I truly think that is part of the process. It's part of the process of learning kind of just when to take a leap of faith, right? And I would say that, if anything, that's kind of been a real eye-opener for me over the years, is getting more comfortable with that. Nowadays, I'm totally comfortable with the risk and and the reward of going and seeking after something big, something that feels hard to process, hard to swallow, even hard to imagine, I'm not as scared of that anymore. But there was a lot of years where that was the most frightening thing ever, where the decision of buying a new lens, was going to, again, make me go bankrupt or whatever it was, or deciding to, I don't know, go on that trip to this place. Is it going to be rewarding? I mean, that's really what my book Wayward is all about. It's about taking a wayward path. It's about not being smart enough to learn from other people's mistakes and having to make mistakes on your own. And I've only been able to do it in that way. And there were so many risks along the way, and some of them paid off, and some of them landed me in a jail cell in Russia, and that's just part of the process. You're going to pay your dues too. But I luckily learned from those experiences as well. So,
do I need to ask about Russia, or is that something?
It's a longer story for a longer time. And if we had an extra 40 minutes, I would grace you with that one. But yeah. All
right, a little happy hour. I don't know. Awesome. Talking about your work on the side here, can you take us a trip down memory lane about your first book, it's California Surf Project?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, before you get started, feel free to talk about the emotions of publishing your first book, and then also maybe the emotions of publishing these guys right here as well.
I did a 50-day road trip of California when I was just starting my career. It was prior to me having traveled anywhere at all. I hadn't ever been on a plane in my life. And I was truly inspired, and I still am really inspired by Ansel Adams. And not because I've seen his photographs, but because I've held his negatives. I've been to the Center for Creative Photography in Arizona where they hold his work. I've read his journals. I was privileged enough to meet the family and to really get a deep understanding of who he was as a person. And when you think about someone that prolific, who changed government policy, who spoke to multiple presidents, who articulated his work so beautifully and advocated for the environment, and you realize that every single thing he ever shot in his career was shot within 3.5 hours of his house. It's significant. It's mind-blowing. And yet here I am, and here we are. We could travel all around the world. And it's hard for us to create a memorable moment sometimes. I feel that way. And so he was and is still a true inspiration for me, for somebody who could see this landscape there and go and create such amazing work and do so in a way that nobody else had. And I guess, if anything, that to me was sort of the starting point for what I hoped my trip of California would be. I grew up in this state. I had never seen it border to border. I had never seen all the coastal communities. All I knew is the small town, in Central California and maybe some bits of Southern California where I had traveled to. And so wanting to kind of document the coast and its culture and its people and its waves in a way that was immersive and where we didn't rush it. We didn't have an agenda. It ended up being 50 days. And we drove up to the Oregon border and we took our way down, trickling down the coast, just trying to stop at every spot, trying to surf in every coastal county. And I didn't do that project with the intent of coming up with a book. It wasn't like this is how I was shooting, but what it offered me and what it taught me, which was absolutely invaluable, was something magic happens on a road trip. And you can look this up. I wrote this article on Red Bulletin one time about the beauty of a road trip and the importance of a road trip for a modern day creative. And if you look at a lot of these people who at least I'm inspired by, whether it's Ansel Adams or Jimmy Chin or Keith Lozinski or Renan Ostrick, all of their careers, all of our careers, it really blossomed during this road trip, right? Where they were on a trip with a friend and maybe they got hurt and they couldn't climb anymore, so they had to take photos. And that's how it started. And for me, it was the intention of I wanted to see all of California. I went with one of my good friends. He wasn't a professional surfer. He was just a guy that I liked to take pictures of. And we both had aspirations to see what California had to offer. And in that process, when you wake up with your camera and it's the first thing you experience, you almost need to take a photograph before you need to drink water, right? You go to bed and the last thing you do before the end of the day, maybe, after you brush your teeth, is you take a picture. You're living and breathing with the camera. And what happens is it becomes an extension of your body. It no longer becomes this tool that feels foreign and alien. It becomes a part of you. And then the creative process begins to take place because no longer are you worried about what setting and what exposure and what lens do I use. It just becomes a part of you. And I think that doing that repeatedly, it's something magic happens in that moment. And I look back at that project, and there's a lot more to unpack there, but I look back at that project and some of my most meaningful, important work was created during those 50 days. And what's so interesting, and I don't want to get deeply into this, but having gone from working freelance, shooting that project by myself for nobody, and then going to work for magazines and working for editor after editor after editor, there was something really special about having nobody tell me how to shoot, what to do, what it should look like. And yet that project, it took me years to figure this out, to look back. It took me years to realize that some of that work was some of the most prolific, highest grossing, highest paying, highest exposure building work I ever shot. And yet after that, I was hired and I was going to places like Costa Rica and Nicaragua and the Mentawais and Indo and blah, 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 shooting some of the best surfers in the world. And those photos mean nothing to me. But there's something that means a lot to me from that trip. And what's crazy is it also meant a lot to Apple and Amazon and Verizon, people that licensed it and bought it, and the prints that were sold. So there's something to be said for that. And it really took me a long time to digest it and process it.
Awesome. I got 2 more questions, and they're going to be some fun ones.
Oh, great.
But then I'll hand it to the audience to create their own little Q&A. So first one, let's talk about your first ever camera. It probably just pop up immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. First ever camera. It was a Canon with a hippie strap. It was my girlfriend at the time's mom's. I think she used it in the 60s in like a photo class at her high school, and she still had it. And I took the thing and I was like, this is amazing. And, big, fat neck strap that went around the body, leather. And I shot some photos with it and I was like, this is so much fun. I was taking pictures of my friends going up and down the coast of California, just surfing, where I lived, in Big Sur and San Simeon and places like that. And I think that growing up without a father figure really gave me this desire to kind of be in a group, in a gang of guys that made me feel comfortable and safe and kind of like I was a part of something. Because I didn't have any brothers or sisters, it was just me. And so I think that my place within that group was the photographer, the documentarian. And it gave me a lot of purpose at the time, end of high school, where it was confusing and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, I had my mom telling me she wanted I should do this and, so and so. So that, I think, gave me a lot of purpose. And again, it wasn't in any way about being creative. I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to have a reason to be there, a reason for me to be the guy that they picked up and took with them, So it kind of started in an unconventional way, really. And I think that it evolved into something more creative and something more beautiful over a long time.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
My first camera, I just want to talk about it quickly.
Yeah.
Canon Rebel T3i. I remember I didn't know jack about photography or cameras. And I went straight to Craigslist, listed for $200 in Laguna Hills. I'm going to get it. I went over to the guy's house, just pretending to know what I was talking about, looking through it, looking through the eye hole and everything. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know if it's working. It's like, yeah, the lens cap's on. But yeah, I'll buy it.
Yes.
It's still in my room though. Still use it.
Love that.
Final question.
Yes.
You were a Boy Scout.
I was, yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. Eagle.
Me too.
Yeah, nice.
I'm an Eagle Scout too.
Eagle, yeah.
Oh, dude, we're nerding out right now.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah, that's phase 2. Yeah.
No, I wasn't there, man.
Yeah.
All right. What was your Eagle Scout project?
I built a wall for my youngest brother. My mom got eventually married, and she had my stepbrother, my half brother, and he went to like a kindergarten, and they needed a wall for donations because that's how they funded their thing. So I built a wall that they could slap tiles on for donations, and it's in Shell Beach. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And for those who don't,
really cool. You'll see it. Everybody will see it. It's amazing. Yeah.
for those who don't know, Eagle Scout, highest rank. You gotta do this Eagle Scout project, and there's blood, sweat, tears. I cried at least. Yeah. I don't know if you cried, but there were tears from my end. But it's a lot of hard work, man, and I don't really mention it. But now we're just nerding out.
I hope you have a tattoo of your badge somewhere.
I got an eagle.
Yeah, that's great.
There you go. Yeah. That's not the reason why I got it. Yeah, man. And then kind of a bit of a sub question. So, I mean, the Boy Scouts enabled my admiration for the outdoors just through all those camping trips, everything. When did what sparked your admiration for the outdoors? Was it at a young age? Was it through Boy Scouts? Was it something else?
That's such a good question. It's so funny because I definitely was that kid that was like kicking and screaming every time, my mom would drag me to the beach or, I'd be, drug up to the mountains to go somewhere. And it's so interesting because looking back, I I wasn't like immediately drawn to the outdoors. I was like every other kid. I wanted to hang with my friends, and I wanted to, play this or watch this or whatever it was. And I think that a moment kind of shifted for me when I got out of high school, and I sort of realized that those experiences I had, whenever I was outside or whenever I was, at a national park or somewhere like that, those were the ones that I remembered. Those are the ones that really stuck with me. Those are the ones that penetrated my psyche in a way that I couldn't forget them. And I think that I didn't necessarily seek out the desire to like be a landscape photographer, but I found joy and peace in the ocean. The ocean still is a place where I find a lot of solace. It's a place where I find answers to really tough questions in life. It's a place I can always return to. And I'm lucky enough to speak to an audience of people here that all appreciates the ocean, I pray, because there are people out there who live in landlocked states, and the ocean legitimately scares them. They feel unsafe being by the sea. I feel incredibly safe. There's something so beautiful about looking out to the ocean being like, that's it, nothing more. Like, I know my place, it's here, that's where that is. It's refreshing, it's eye-opening. It is, it brings you back to a place of realizing how small and insignificant you are. And when you see the ocean rise and the waves get big and the swells get huge, you also, again, are reminded how insignificant you are. And I love that. And I think that that was sort of the impetus for wanting to have a desire to make that my first canvas, right? I was usually, with the ocean also was like a babysitter. I'd get dropped off at the beach with $5 and my mom picked me up later, and, I would have kind of fed myself sort of, and, who knows what I did. I maybe pooped in the sand somewhere or whatever. So it was, I had this relationship with it, and I loved it, and I still love it. And I think that I aim to form that same kind of relationship with other landscapes that I see and I experience. And that immersiveness is important. Like, you can truly have a relationship with a place. You can talk to it. You can speak to it. It is important. I try to teach my kids that. I wrote a kid's book about that idea so that they could find answers to some of life's toughest questions, because you don't want them to have to rely upon, I don't know, a lot of the other places where they can get information these days. And I think that that's just an important thing to consider and to offer people. Yeah.
Thank you. Sand poop.
Yeah.
That's all I can really think of. Do
not go digging around the beach in Pismo, okay? Especially between 34th and 5th Avenue. So, yeah.
All right, so I'll pretty much hand it to the audience. If you guys want to raise your hand for a question, you can just try to say it as loud as you can. I'm going to try to repeat it. But does anybody have any questions for Chris?
Anything at all. Everything is on the table.
Yeah, we have Tanner?
See a toothpick behind your ear?
Yes. That was accidental.
I was going to say oral fixation or brisket picker.
Oh, this was a brisket situation right here. Yeah, absolutely.
I chew a lot of toothpicks.
Yeah. Hey, well, this side's like basically pretty busted up, so thank you for the note. Yes. Louder, I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Have you ever gone through a period of like creative depression?
Creative depression.
Yeah.
Every day. All the time. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be so bold as to give you my honest opinion, which I think is that every single person in life, if you pursue a creative pursuit of any kind, you will go through creative depression. And I genuinely feel like a big part of that is the fact that we strive to find this life in balance, when really life is not about balance. It's about rhythm, I think. It's about highs and lows, and hoping that you can find some kind of path that feels in sync, right? Because it's the same thing with my wife. Like, it's not always going to be like, everything's going to be in balance. It's going to be even all the time. It's chaos. That's just what it is. My career creates some chaos sometimes, and so we have to find rhythm to make it work. And I feel like my recipe for finding more rhythm in life has been to recognize that depression or creative block or whatever you want to call it, it typically comes from giving too much, offering more than you can handle, right? And so what happens is when I'm home, I try to fill my cup up. I fill up my well, your well of inspiration, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's full of Mountain Dew, I don't know. But the point is, you make deposits. That deposit might be going to yoga. That deposit might be, spending time with somebody you love. That deposit might be sleeping in. That deposit might be reading a good book. It might be exercise. Who knows? It's something for you. It's not you giving to somebody else. Because when I go out on a job or an assignment, I'm giving to other people. I'm giving to that job, that career, that client, that whatever. I'm giving 110%, right? And then I'm trying, when I'm home and I'm not on a job, or maybe it's a part of the day, I'm trying to keep that part of the day for myself. And I actually read this book by Greg McKeown called Essentialism. Has anybody read it? Shame on you. Yes. Who has? Somebody? Nice. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Incredible book. Incredible. Changed my life. As a person who grew up in a super blue-collar family where, like, saying no to work was basically a sacrilegious statement, like, I didn't know how to do that. I was, at an early age, like, very much a workaholic. And I think that being a creative creates a magnifying glass on that, because you're afraid to say no because you'll become irrelevant, or the client won't hire you again, or insert, ridiculous statement. But that happens. It's the truth. And so it perpetuates this mindset where you have to say yes all the time. And the book, not to spoil it for you, but it basically says if you learn to say no, you're actually saying yes to what you want. You are advocating for yourself. And that was a hard lesson I had to learn. And I feel genuinely more happy, more fulfilled, more open-minded since reading that, since creating safeguards for myself and my time, my mental health. But also, I genuinely feel like learning to have more than just one mode of expression. I am a photographer by trade, but I'm also a product designer. I also do a lot of public speaking. I've written a lot of books. I've authored. I've made films. I've worn a lot of hats. And I started to wear those hats. And in the beginning, they didn't fit. But the point was that I wanted to have more than just one flavor of ice cream I could try, because vanilla gets boring after a while. And if the only way you can see the world is through a camera, how limited is your perspective? And so for me, as somebody who needs to express himself creatively, to feel alive, to feel heard, to feel seen, all these things, I needed to find other ways to do that. So that's where films came along. That's where making a book came along. And that's where mentorship and teaching and all of these things came along. And I think that that is one of the recipes I've found to counteract that. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I don't know how to say it in any other way.
Awesome. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for coming. I never thought you'd come to Orange County, so I was like, no way is he coming to a place like 10 minutes away from me. But anyway.
I've spent many a nights down here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always followed your work since like 2015 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your films, your photos are amazing. But like one thing I find amazing about life from seeing you on Instagram is your family.
Oh, thank you.
Life, since I believe you've been together for quite a long time.
Quite a long time, yeah.
How have you managed that in the midst of all, like you said, the chaos of some of the stuff you've had to do for you?
Okay, so I'm going to summarize, because I don't know if everybody could hear you, but the question was, my life is cool, but my family's cooler. And you think my wife is cute, which is awesome. And you just wanted to know how I've managed to basically stay married over the course of these almost 16 years. And I'm obviously joking here, but I do want to give you an honest answer. And again, this is the world according to Chris. So just toss it out. If you're like, hey, that's BS, like, don't listen. That's fine. But I will say that for us, what I realized a long time ago was like, life is not fair, and it is what it is. Like, there are times where my job sucks. There are times where her job sucks. It is what it is. So for us, it has been important and critical to find each other on an equal plane. And what I mean by that is that if I come back from a trip and, oh my God, it was a life-changing experience, and I saw the Northern Lights, and this guy was surfing in front of the Northern Lights on this wave in the middle of Iceland, we made this film, and I'm literally a new person having experienced this, and Bree, aren't you listening to me? This is incredible. Don't you feel it too? Yada, yada, yada. And she's like, I've been dealing with a kid with croup for like the last 2 weeks and antibiotics and whatever it is, right? Point being is that there are times in a relationship, in a marriage, where you need to see the other person for where they are and try to read and understand what they need. And I would say that with that, it has been critical for both of us to have experiences that allow us to expand who we are. If I am the only one in a relationship having eye-opening, living outside of my comfort zone type of experiences, how could I ever expect her to meet me where I am, and vice versa? So when I get home, oftentimes it's not about, hey Bree, let me give you some relief. You go have a weekend in Palm Springs with your girls. That's great too. Maybe that's your thing. But usually, what we try to say is like, for our growth together, you need to go do something. She needs to go do something that will empower her to be able to meet me and say, Chris, here's what I learned. I did this somatic therapy course. It was incredible. I learned all about breath work and blah, blah, blah. And I did this equine mastery program, whatever it is. So we're coming together, being able to teach each other something. It's the same thing with my kids. Like, I don't want my kids to be a photographer. I want my kids to have their own interests so that when we see each other and when we connect, they're teaching me something. They feel equal. It's not about me teaching them what I know. It's about them and me coming together being like, well, you know something new. I want to learn that. I have a genuine thirst for what you know, and vice versa. And so in our relationship, that's been really crucial. And I would also say that generally, if I get home from a trip and my kids don't know where I've been, I've already failed. Like, the goal should be to be thinking of them in the moment, sending them small bits and pieces of what reminds me of them while I'm there, because then they know that I'm thinking about them and they know that they are top of mind, and that's really changed our relationship as well. And I will say also that if I can be so vulnerable, is to say that there was a good portion of my life where I didn't know anything other than how to work, and I didn't really know how to be a dad because I didn't have a dad. And so all of those kind of issues for me that were very real, they didn't really arise until I had kids. Because you grow up and it's all you've ever known. And so it's just how you've operated from day one. You didn't grow up with that type of figure in your life. And then all of a sudden you have kids and you're like, I don't even know how to deal with this because I've never dealt with this, because nobody dealt with this with me. Nobody responded to me like this. So I'm just going to slowly go and do what I know I'm good at. And I'm giving you this example because I just want you to know that I think that part of that process of learning how to be a better caretaker and a better partner was going to therapy also, and trying to deal with some of those issues, and trying to look back and do the work to be a better version of myself. And I would also say that has been one of my strengths, is reflection. I've not been great at, again, not making the mistake. I've usually made the mistake myself. Whatever the mistake was, I can't really read a book and learn from that dude's mistakes or that girl's mistakes. But I have been good at looking back and realizing that was an issue, and that if this doesn't get sorted out, I'm going to be 1 degree off, and that 1 degree is going to turn into 100. And so I think that's been a strength of mine, and I've used that my whole career.
Yeah. Brilliant. I think we can take one more question.
20 more, yeah, go for it. Just kidding.
I feel like such an accomplished photographer, writer, book, everything that you've listed. At the end of the day, for your family, for the world, for everyone here, what do you want your legacy to be? I don't have a desire to have any kind of legacy. To be honest, I think that my legacy is built into my kids. That's kind of the goal. If they're good people, I'll be pretty stoked. And if anything, what I really try to share to artists. And I think every person is an artist. If you're a living being, you are an artist. You're living artfully. If you're living vulnerably, you are living artfully. If you are expressing your undying love to a partner, that's artistry. That's beautiful. It is vulnerability. And I would say that artists need to lead with more vulnerability, because I genuinely feel like what the world needs more of is conversations like this. That's why we're drawn to podcasts, long-form conversations. We, surprisingly, even though we have a 6-second attention span, somehow we can tune into a podcast for 2 to 3 hours. Because the sound of people's voice and the intimate conversation and the in-depth stuff we actually care about. And I think that generally we used to sit around campfires and tell stories. And storytelling is at the root of how I think we solve issues or see eye to eye or build bridges and not walls. And I genuinely feel like if there's one piece of advice I give to creatives or artists or anybody hoping to share their work in any way, it's that I tell them, never describe to people what you can already see. And I know that might sound kind of esoteric, but when you think about it, when you're sharing something, whether it's an Instagram post or whether it's a book or whether it's a photograph or whatever it is, you don't need to know that there's a plane and the guy's going surfing. And guess what? It's rainy weather. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is what you experienced in that moment, because you were the person that took the photo, that experienced the thing, that went to the place, that traveled the long distance. And if you don't share it, and if you work your ass off to have this incredible life-changing moment, and then you simply chalk it all up to saying, the mountains are calling and I must go. That does you a huge disservice as a creative person, as an artist. It truly like diminishes the opportunity for you to grow as a person. And I feel like I am telling you this because I've done that thing, and I'm trying to be better, and I'm trying to teach others to be better. And I think that there is a way of articulating what we experience and what we feel, and the wind that hit the back of our neck, and the cold, numb fingers, and all those things that is so beautiful. And that's what I hope my legacy has something to do with, is helping people to find that voice in a more clear, definitive way. I'm still on my journey to find it. I don't know if it's in Iceland or somewhere else, but I'm just trying to be open to where opportunities call me. And if anything, what I've learned is that I need to be as truthful to myself with that advice as anybody else. And that's why I've chosen to uproot my whole life and be somewhere else so that I could live and practice what I'm preaching.
Give it up for Chris.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I thought it was a good send-off.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
That was
Appreciate you all. It was amazing. I really love the questions. They're genuinely awesome. Amazing.
I think our send-off should be like, caw.
Yeah. I just jump. I form wings.
Oh, yeah. You can do like a little butterfly flap.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you guys taking the time to listen to Chris. We're going to be sticking around for like another hour. So continuing to do signings, sell prints and books. We also have the collaborative gear with DB here on this rack.
If you want to know anything about it, hit me up. I'll tell you all about it. Just so you know, all the materials made from like this sounds really weird, but it's like an impregnated, kind of Cordura nylon, so it's like waterproof on the outside and really burly. I know because I've drug it all over the world through airports. It's airport draggable. And yes, I do have a collection of books here. I'd love to chat with you guys. I know there's probably some questions that didn't get answered. And I will say too, like, if you're ever going somewhere that I've been, you want intel, you want advice, you want a piece of travel tip or whatever, hit me up. I mean, that is truly one of my greatest joys. I'm pretty sure that I have responded to 99.9% of the direct messages that have come through from anybody in this crowd. It's one of my favorite tools. Social media is just a glorified texting app. That's all it is. It's a communication tool between people. And I happen to love people, and I'm grateful to be here. And the 15-year-old me would have pinched myself ever thinking that anybody cared about what I had to say. And so I just want to say thank you for coming, and thank you to DB for hosting this. Thank you to Seed Market and your whole team for hosting this, and I appreciate you guys a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.